When I saw my 8-year-old daughter, Meadow's blue lips in that hospital bed, shaking uncontrollably despite 3 heated blankets, I knew exactly what I had to do. But instead of screaming at my in-laws who put her outside in 34-degree weather, I quietly handed the doctor their text messages. 20 minutes later, Child Protective Services was involved, and by the next morning, every single grandchild in the Brennan family had been removed from their care. My name is Rebecca, and I'm about to tell you how my daughter's grandparents nearly killed her over their obsession with having a grandson. I'm a school nurse, which means I've seen plenty of sick kids, but nothing prepared me for seeing my own child in the early stages of hypothermia because her grandparents decided she wasn't worthy of sleeping indoors. This happened 3 weeks ago, and the fallout destroyed my husband's entire family. But I need you to understand something first. This wasn't a mistake or an oversight. This was deliberate, and I have the text messages to prove it. My daughter, Meadow, is the sweetest kid you'll ever meet. She's 8 years old, loves her rainbow unicorn backpack, and still believes that people are basically good. She trusted her grandparents completely when I dropped her off that Friday afternoon for what was supposed to be a fun cousin sleepover weekend. My husband Dale couldn't make the drive because he was recovering from major back surgery after an accident at his construction site. So it was just me, driving Meadow 2 hours to his parents' house, the same house where Dale grew up, where his police chief father Vernon and his bank manager mother Judith had raised 3 kids and now played favorites with their grandchildren. Mommy, do you think Grandma will make me special pancakes this time? Meadow asked me during that drive, her voice hopeful but cautious. She always makes them special for Trevor and Skylar with chocolate chips and whipped cream, but she says I don't need all that sugar. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, keeping my voice light. Maybe this time will be different, sweetheart. But I already knew it wouldn't be different, because Meadow had committed the unforgivable crime in the Brennan family universe. She was born a girl, and not just any girl, but the only child of their youngest son, the one who was supposed to carry on the precious Brennan family name with a house full of boys. When we pulled up to their pristine 2-story colonial house that afternoon, all the other grandkids were already there. 5 cousins total for the weekend. Pamela's kids, Trevor and Skylar, ages 10 and 12, were playing basketball in the driveway. Nolan's boys, 8-year-old twins named Rowan and Flynn, were kicking a soccer ball around the front yard. Judith came out wearing her perfect grandmother smile, the one she used at church functions and grocery store encounters. "Oh, there's our little Meadow. Come give Grandma a hug." But even her hug felt different, quick, obligatory, like checking off a box on a list. When Trevor ran over, she grabbed him and spun him around, covering his face with kisses. "There's my handsome boy, my future Harvard man." Vernon emerged from the garage, his presence still commanding even at 66, that police chief authority radiating from every movement. He nodded at me, ruffled Meadow's hair absently, then immediately engaged the boys in talk about their sports teams and latest achievements. "You sure you have room for everyone?" I asked Judith one more time as I set down Meadow's overnight bag. 5 kids is a lot." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Rebecca, please. We've got it all figured out. This house has 4 bedrooms, remember? We raised 3 children here. But where will everyone sleep exactly? Don't helicopter parent, dear," she said, her smile tightening just a fraction. "We've been handling grandchildren longer than you've been a mother." That should have been my first red flag. The way she said grandchildren with emphasis, like Meadow was something else entirely. But Dale had begged me to give his parents a chance to help while he recovered, and I was exhausted from working double shifts to cover his lost income. So I kissed Meadow goodbye, told her to be good and help her grandparents, and drove away. I drove away from my baby girl, leaving her in the hands of people who would lock her outside in near freezing weather while every other grandchild slept warm inside. The last thing Meadow said to me was, "Don't worry, Mommy. I'll be brave like Daddy says." She was brave, all right. Brave enough to survive a night that would trigger a DCFS investigation, destroy family relationships, and expose the ugly truth about how some grandparents pick favorites based on nothing more than what's between a child's legs. But no 8-year-old should have to be that brave. No child should have to knock on a door for 10 minutes in the freezing cold while their grandfather watches through the window and tells them to go back outside, What happened over the next 48 hours changed everything. And when my sister-in-law Pamela saw the doorbell footage of my baby begging to come inside, while her father told her to be a big girl and return to her tent, she said something I'll never forget. "My God, Rebecca, they tortured her, and we all just stood by and let it happen because we didn't want to rock the boat." But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you exactly how two supposedly loving grandparents nearly killed my daughter over their twisted idea of family legacy, and how their own words in black and white text messages brought their entire house of cards crashing down. Life hadn't been easy since Dale's accident at the construction site 6 months ago. While he recovered from his back surgery, I'd been pulling double shifts at the elementary school where I worked as a nurse. The Brennans had always been particular about things. Their house ran like Vernon's old police precinct, everything scheduled and controlled. The accident changed everything for our small family. Dale had been supervising a commercial build downtown when a scaffolding collapse caught him wrong, crushing 3 vertebrae in his lower back. The surgery saved him from paralysis, but the recovery meant 6 months minimum off work, physical therapy 3 times a week, and pain that kept him awake most nights. Workers' comp covered the basics, but barely. That's why I started taking every extra shift the school district offered, working summer school, aftercare programs, even weekend vaccination clinics. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom ranch about 2 hours from Dale's parents. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. And Meadow had her own room decorated with those glow-in-the-dark stars she'd insisted on arranging into actual constellations after her 2nd grade science unit on space. She was that kind of kid, precise and thoughtful, always wanting to get things exactly right. The Brennans lived in Eaglewood, the kind of suburb where every lawn looks like a golf course and people judge you by your hedge trimming. Vernon had been police chief there for 20 years before retiring, and Judith had run the local bank branch like her personal kingdom. They were the kind of people who had opinions about everything: how you should raise your kids, what career paths were acceptable, why having sons mattered more than having daughters. "Rebecca, we'd love to have Meadow for the long weekend," Judith had called that Thursday afternoon. I was at work dealing with a kindergartner who'd gotten a bead stuck up his nose. "All the cousins will be here. Pamela's bringing Trevor and Skylar, and your brother-in-law Nolan is bringing his boys." The timing seemed perfect. Memorial Day weekend meant 3 days off from school, and Dale had just started a new pain medication that was knocking him out for hours at a time. Maybe some quiet would help him heal. But something in my gut twisted when Judith mentioned all the cousins. "That's 5 kids, Judith. Are you sure you can manage?" Her laugh was sharp, almost offended. "I raised 3 children, Rebecca. I think I can handle a few grandkids for a weekend. Besides, Vernon's here to help, and you know how the children respect their grandfather." Respect. That's what she called it when the kids went silent and still around Vernon, like little soldiers waiting for inspection. I'd watched it happen every Christmas, every Easter, every family gathering. The boys got approving nods and shoulder squeezes. Meadow got a pat on the head if she was lucky. I'd tried talking to Dale about it before, but he always defended them. "They're from a different generation, Becca. Dad always wanted the family name to continue. It's important to him." "More important than his granddaughter?" I'd asked once. "That's not fair. They love Meadow. They just show it. Differently. Like the birthday cards that came with $100 bills for the boys and $25 gift certificates to the bookstore for Meadow. Like the Christmas gifts where Trevor got a top-of-the-line baseball glove and Meadow got educational workbooks. Like the family photos where the boys were front and center and Meadow was always slightly to the side, almost an afterthought. But Dale was in pain, and I was exhausted, and maybe I was being oversensitive. That's what I told myself as I packed Meadow's bag that Friday morning. Her warmest pajamas, extra socks, her favorite stuffed elephant named Professor Peanuts, and the sleeping bag from our garage, because Judith had mentioned they might let the kids camp out in the basement for fun. "You sure you want to go, baby?" I asked Meadow as she carefully folded her clothes into her purple overnight bag. "Daddy needs quiet to get better," she said, so matter-of-fact it broke my heart. "And maybe if I'm really good, Grandma and Grandpa will like me as much as the boys." "Sweetheart, they love you just as much." She looked at me with those serious green eyes, too wise for 8 years old. "No, Mommy, they don't. But that's okay. I have you and Daddy." During the drive to Eaglewood, Meadow chattered about her hopes for the weekend. Maybe Grandpa would teach her the card games he taught Trevor. Maybe Grandma would let her help make those special pancakes instead of just watching from the breakfast table. Maybe this time would be different. I should have turned around. Every maternal instinct I had was screaming warnings, but I ignored them because I wanted to believe that grandparents, even flawed ones, wouldn't deliberately hurt their grandchild. I wanted to believe that family meant something, that blood connection provided some basic level of protection and care. How wrong I was. How dangerously, stupidly wrong. Saturday morning, 6:47 a.m. My phone rang. Judith's number. I was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, going over bills while Dale slept fitfully in our bedroom. The early morning call sent ice through my veins immediately. "Rebecca, you need to come get Meadow. She's not feeling well." "What's wrong? Does she have a fever? Is she throwing up?" My nurse instincts kicked in instantly. "Just come get her," Judith said, her tone clipped and annoyed rather than concerned. "She's being dramatic and it's upsetting the other children's breakfast." The 2-hour drive felt like 10. I called 3 times during the trip, but Judith only texted back, "Just drive safely. She's fine, just needs her mother." But mothers know. We know when something is really wrong. And every mile I drove, the feeling in my stomach grew worse. I pushed the speed limit, took shortcuts through back roads, and pulled into their circular driveway at 8:52 a.m. When I burst through their front door without knocking, the scene stopped me cold. Meadow was on. Their white leather couch, wrapped in what looked like every throw blanket they owned, her whole body shaking violently. Her lips weren't just pale, they had a blue tinge that sent my medical training into overdrive. The other kids were at the dining table, eating tall stacks of pancakes with strawberries and whipped cream, laughing at something on Trevor's phone. "What happened?" I demanded, dropping to my knees beside Meadow, immediately checking her pulse. It was slow, too slow. Her skin felt like ice even through the blankets. Vernon stood in the doorway to the dining room, coffee mug in hand, wearing his weekend polo shirt and khakis like this was any normal Saturday. She must have caught something. Kids were all playing outside yesterday. But something felt wrong beyond Meadow's condition. Her sleeping bag was bunched by the front door, and when I looked closer, I could see moisture on it, the kind that comes from morning dew. Her overnight bag was there too, and her clothes inside were cold to the touch, like they'd been left in an unheated space. "Where did she sleep last night?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Judith appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron decorated with little roosters. "Well, we had a little space issue. Trevor and Skylar took one guest room naturally, since Pamela specifically asked that they stay together. Nolan's boys took the other guest room. So we set up a nice camping experience for Meadow in the backyard. She said she liked camping." The words hit me like physical blows. "You put my 8-year-old daughter outside? It was 34 degrees last night. The weather alert on my phone warned about near freezing temperatures." "The tent was perfectly safe," Vernon said, his voice taking on that authority tone he used to use with suspects. "I used that same tent in my police training exercises, military grade. Besides, she had a sleeping bag." I grabbed the sleeping bag, checking the tag. "This is rated for 50 degrees minimum. This is a summer bag from our garage. Did you even check? Did you give her extra blankets?" "She had her pajamas and that stuffed animal," Judith said defensively. "We checked on her at 10 when we let the dogs out. She was fine." That's when Meadow's weak voice cut through everything. "I knocked on the door, Mommy, at midnight. I was so cold. I couldn't feel my toes anymore." The room went silent except for the sound of forks clinking on plates in the dining room where the boys kept eating their special pancakes. "What do you mean you knocked?" I asked gently, stroking her freezing forehead. I got so cold my teeth were making noise, like clicking together, but I couldn't stop them. So I came to the back door and knocked. Grandpa came after a while. He opened the door and I asked if I could come inside, just to warm up for a little bit. Vernon's face flushed red. She needed to learn to be tough. All this coddling is why kids today are so soft. "She's 8 years old!" I screamed, finally losing control. "What did you do when she knocked?" Meadow's eyes filled with tears. "He said I was being a baby and disturbing everyone's sleep. He said the boys would never complain like this. He said I needed to go back to the tent and be a big girl. So I did. I tried, Mommy. I tried to be brave like Daddy always says. My hands shook as I scooped her up, all 60 pounds of her trembling body. We're going to the hospital. Now. Oh, Rebecca, don't be so dramatic, Judith said. She's fine, just a little chilly. A little chilly? Look at her lips. Look at her fingernails. This is hypothermia, Judith. This is what we see in homeless people who sleep outside, not in grandchildren visiting their grandparents. As I carried Meadow to the door, Trevor called out from the dining room, "Is Meadow okay, Aunt Rebecca?" Before I could answer, Vernon said, "She's fine, son. Just not as tough as you boys. Some kids aren't built for adventure." That's when I noticed Pamela's son, Skylar, looked uncomfortable, pushing his pancakes around his plate. Later, I would learn he'd heard Meadow knocking too, had even gotten up to let her in, but Vernon had stopped him, saying it would build character for her to stay outside. 5 kids in the house, 4 beds inside, 1 tent in the backyard. The math was simple and cruel. In the ER at Riverside Medical Center, Dr. Kalani confirmed moderate hypothermia. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and steady hands who spoke to Meadow gently while ordering warming blankets and heated IV fluids. As the medical team worked to raise Meadow's core temperature safely, monitoring her heart rhythm for any dangerous irregularities, Dr. Kulani pulled me aside for standard intake questions. How long was she exposed to the cold temperatures? About 9 hours, I said, my voice hollow and mechanical. From approximately 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., my in-laws made her sleep outside in a tent while 5 other grandchildren slept inside the house. Dr. Kulani's expression shifted immediately. Her professional composure cracked just enough to show genuine alarm. They made her? Can you elaborate on that? Was this some form of punishment? They said there wasn't enough room inside, 2 guest bedrooms for 5 kids, so they put my daughter outside in 34-degree weather with a summer sleeping bag. And where were the adults sleeping? In their master bedroom, inside, warm. She made notes on her tablet, her jaw tightening. Mrs. Brennan, I need to ask some difficult questions. Has Meadow been subjected to differential treatment before? Is there a pattern here? That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady despite the rage building in my chest. I have text messages, months of them. Let me show you exactly what kind of people left my baby outside to freeze. The first screenshot was from 3 months ago. A message Judith had sent to Dale that he'd shown me during an argument about Christmas plans. "Dale, we need to talk about your situation. Meadow is a sweet girl, but she's not going to carry on the Brennan name. Pamela's boys are the future of this family. You need to try for a son before it's too late." The next one was from Judith to her sister, which Pamela had forwarded to me in confidence last month. "I buy the boys gifts from the sporting goods store and get Meadow something educational from the teacher supply store. She doesn't need the same things as our real grandchildren. It would be wasteful." Dr. Kulani's face went rigid as she read. "Mrs. Brennan, are there more?" I scrolled to the message that made my hands shake with fury. It was from last week in a group text between Judith and Vernon that Vernon had accidentally included me in, before quickly deleting me. "Vernon, Rebecca wants to know about sleeping arrangements for the weekend. Don't tell her about the tent yet, she'll just make a fuss. Meadow doesn't need what the boys need. She's not really a Brennan anyway, not in the way that matters." But the worst one, the one that sealed their fate, was from Friday night. Meadow had been playing with Vernon's iPad earlier that day and saw the notification pop up. She'd read it and told me about it just now in the hospital bed, her voice small and confused. "Put the girl outside. The real grandchildren need the rooms. She'll be fine. Children slept in worse conditions in my day and turned out better for it. This softness is why Dale only managed to give us 1 girl instead of sons." Dr. Kulani set down her tablet and looked me directly in the eyes. "Mrs. Brennan, I'm mandated to report this. This constitutes child endangerment and potentially discriminatory abuse. The pattern of emotional abuse combined with last night's physical endangerment requires immediate intervention. I need to contact DCFS immediately." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "Report everything." "Are you sure? This will trigger a full investigation. All the grandchildren will be interviewed. I thought about Meadows' blue lips, her shaking body, her small voice saying she'd knocked on the door at midnight only to be turned away. My daughter could have died last night. She has mild hypothermia because her grandparents decided she wasn't worthy of sleeping indoors. So yes, I'm sure. Report it all. Dr. Kulani nodded and picked up the hospital phone. Within minutes, she was speaking to a DCFS intake worker, reading from her medical notes. 8-year-old female, core body temperature of 94.2 degrees upon arrival. Moderate hypothermia secondary to overnight cold exposure. Guardian reports child was locked outside while other children remained indoors. Evidence of pattern discrimination and emotional abuse via documented text messages. While she made the call, I sat beside Meadows' bed, holding her warming hand. She looked up at me with those trusting green eyes and asked, "Mommy, did I do something bad? Is that why I had to sleep outside?" "No, baby. You did nothing wrong. Grandma and Grandpa made a very bad choice, and now other adults are going to make sure they never do it again." Dale arrived then, having driven himself despite doctor's orders against driving post-surgery. He hobbled in using his walker, his face gray with pain and panic. When he saw Meadow hooked up to monitors and IVs, he nearly collapsed. "What happened? Mom said she just had a cold." I handed him my phone with the text messages displayed. "Your parents left our daughter outside in freezing weather because she's not a boy. Read their own words, Dale. Read what they wrote about our little girl." As he read, his face transformed from confusion to horror, to a rage I'd never seen in 12 years of marriage. The gentle construction supervisor who never raised his voice, who always defended his parents, who insisted they meant well, was gone. In his place was a father who finally understood that his parents had tortured his child for the crime of being born female. "I'm going to kill them," he whispered. "No," I said firmly. "We're going to do something worse. We're going to let the system they worship, the law enforcement and child protection services your father spent his career championing, show them exactly what happens to people who endanger children." By noon, DCFS investigator Ms. Roberta Thorne had arrived at the hospital. She was a black woman in her 50s, with silver streaks in her braided hair and eyes that had seen too much but still held compassion. She interviewed me first, then Dale, taking detailed notes in a leather portfolio while a younger colleague recorded everything on a tablet. When she spoke with Meadow, she was gentle but thorough. "Sweetheart, can you tell me about last night? Just tell me what happened in your own words." Meadow, now stable but still receiving warm fluids through her IV, spoke clearly. "Grandma said all the beds were taken by my cousins. She showed me the tent in the backyard and said it would be fun, like camping. But it wasn't fun. It was so cold I couldn't sleep. My feet felt like they were burning but frozen at the same time." "And when you knocked on the door?" "Grandpa looked at me through the glass door. I was crying because I was so cold. He opened it and I said, 'Please, Grandpa, I'm freezing.' He said the boys would never act like such babies, and I needed to learn to be tougher. He said if I came inside, I'd wake everyone up and ruin their sleep." Ms. Thorne made extensive notes, then reviewed the medical records and the screenshots of text messages I'd provided. "This is extremely serious," she said. "The combination of physical endangerment and documented emotional abuse, particularly the differential treatment between grandchildren based on gender, requires immediate action. I need to contact the other families involved." The investigation moved with stunning speed. By 2 p.m., she'd reached Pamela at her college reunion and Nolan at his business conference. That's when everything exploded. Pamela called me screaming from the hotel lobby where her reunion was being held. "What did you do? DCFS just told me Mom and Dad can't have unsupervised access to any of the grandkids pending investigation." "I didn't do anything," I replied calmly, exhausted beyond measure. "I showed the doctor evidence of what they did to Meadow. The hospital made the report, not me." "Evidence? What evidence? This has to be a misunderstanding." I forwarded her the screenshots. The line went quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then I heard muffled sobbing. "Oh my God," Pamela whispered. "The real grandchildren? They called my boys the real grandchildren?" Her voice cracked and broke. "Rebecca, I need to tell you something. I noticed things. How they treated Meadow differently. The Christmas gifts. The birthday parties where Meadow was barely in any photos. Last Thanksgiving, Mom made special desserts for each boy, their favorites, and told Meadow she could have vanilla ice cream from the freezer. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I benefited from it," she cried. "My boys got the better gifts, the special treatment, the college funds." "Oh God, did you know about the college funds?" "Mom told me last month they'd set up trust funds for each boy, $50,000 each. When I asked about Meadow and my Skylar, she said girls don't need as much help in life because they'll just get married." The revelation hit like a punch. "Skylar too? They discriminated against your daughter too?" "Not as badly as Meadow. At least Skylar got to sleep inside last night." Pamela's voice turned bitter. "But yes, the boys each have trusts. The girls have nothing, and I kept quiet because at least my boys were provided for." Then came the biggest shock. Pamela's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Rebecca, I'm sitting here at my laptop. I just logged into Mom's Ring doorbell app. She gave me the password last year. I'm reviewing the footage from last night." "What do you see?" "I can see everything. The back porch camera shows Meadow knocking on the door at 12:13 a.m. She knocked for 10 minutes straight. She was in her pajamas and socks, no shoes, shivering so hard she could barely stand. Dad came to the door at 12:15. I can see him talking to her through the glass. At 12:23, he opened the door, said something, and pointed back to the tent. She was crying, Rebecca. She was sobbing, and he still made her go back. He told investigators she never tried to come inside. He lied. The video shows everything. At 12:47, she tried again. This time, he didn't even come to the door. The camera shows her standing there for 20 minutes before giving up. There's frost visible on the deck. Her breath is coming out in clouds. She finally walked back to the tent at 1:08 a.m. "Send me that footage. Send it to the DCFS investigator. Send it to everyone." Within an hour, Ms. Thorne had the video evidence. Vernon had told her directly that Meadow never attempted to come inside, that she'd been fine in the tent all night. The footage proved he'd lied to a DCFS investigator during an active child endangerment case. Nolan called next, his voice shaking. "They did what? They put Meadow outside? My boys were inside the house warm, and they put an 8-year-old girl in a tent in freezing weather?" "Your boys didn't know. None of the kids knew until morning." "But I knew," he said quietly. "I knew they treated her differently. Every family gathering, every holiday. Mom always had excuses. Meadow was quieter, so she didn't need as much attention. Meadow was easier, so she didn't need the same gifts. Meadow was just one child, while I had two and Pamela had two, so obviously the pairs needed more." By evening, the DCFS determination was official. Vernon and Judith Brennan were prohibited from unsupervised contact with any minor children pending completion of parenting classes, therapy, and a full investigation. The Ring doorbell footage of Meadow being turned away, combined with the text messages explicitly stating she was treated differently because she wasn't a real grandchild, had sealed their fate. But the real bomb dropped when Pamela discovered something else in her search through digital evidence. "Rebecca, I found emails. Mom's been forwarding them to her sister for years. Listen to this one from last year. If Dale had married someone better, someone who could give him sons, we wouldn't be in this situation. One granddaughter is all he managed, and not even a pretty one who might marry well. At least Nolan and Pamela understood their duty to the family name." The cruelty was breathtaking. They hadn't just discriminated against Meadow for being a girl. They'd blamed me for not producing sons, blamed Dale for marrying me, and dismissed Meadow's entire worth as a human being because she couldn't carry on their precious family name. The DCFS ruling was swift and severe. No unsupervised contact with any grandchildren pending completion of parenting classes and family therapy. Vernon lost his position on the local police memorial board when the story spread through Eaglewood like wildfire. Someone had leaked the Ring doorbell footage to a community Facebook group, and watching a former police chief turn away a freezing child became the scandal that destroyed his reputation. Judith was asked to step down from her church's child care committee the following Sunday. But the real aftermath happened in our hospital room that night. Dale had been silent for over an hour after reviewing all the evidence, sitting in the uncomfortable visitor's chair despite his back pain, staring at Meadows' small form in the hospital bed. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. They were punishing her for being a girl, weren't they? And punishing us for not giving them a grandson. His voice cracked completely. My own parents tortured my baby girl because of their sick obsession with the family name, because of their twisted idea that boys matter more. Meadow, warming up but still weak, had been listening. She said something that broke my heart into a million pieces. "Daddy, did I do something wrong? Why don't Grandma and Grandpa love me like they love Trevor and Rowan and Flynn?" Dale carefully moved to sit on her bed, pulling her close despite his own pain. Tears streamed down his face as he held her. "You did nothing wrong, sweetheart. Nothing. Sometimes adults have broken ideas about what makes someone valuable. But you know what? You're worth more than all their backwards traditions combined. You're worth more than their family name, their expectations, their whole world view. But I'm just a girl," Meadow said quietly. "You're not just anything," Dale said fiercely. "You're brilliant and kind and brave. You survived something terrible with more courage than most adults would have. You're my daughter, and that makes you the most important person in my world." The next weeks brought revelation after revelation. Pamela and Nolan both cut contact with their parents after discovering the extent of the favoritism. Pamela found bank statements showing her parents had opened college funds worth $50,000 for each boy, but nothing for the girls. Nolan discovered they'd been telling people at their country club that he had 2 fine sons, while Dale just has the one girl, unfortunately. The investigation also revealed that Vernon had told his former police colleagues that he was building character in Meadow that night, that kids today are too soft, and he was doing us a favor by toughening her up. Several officers came forward to say they'd been uncomfortable with how he talked about his granddaughter versus his grandsons, but nobody had thought it rose to the level of abuse until now. 3 weeks later, Dale's sister Emma, who lived across the country and rarely visited, called with her own story. "They did something similar to my daughter years ago," she admitted. "Not as severe, but during a summer visit, they made her sleep in the unfinished basement while the boy cousins got the guest rooms. Said girls were tougher and didn't need comfort. I never left her alone with them again, but I should have warned you. I'm so sorry." 6 months later, we received a letter from Judith asking to reconcile. She claimed they'd completed their required courses and understood their mistakes. She wrote about how she'd been raised to value boys more, how her own parents had done the same, how she thought she was maintaining important traditions. Dale wanted to burn the letter. I wanted to frame it as evidence of how ignorance passes from generation to generation. But Meadow, now healthy and in therapy, had the last word. "I don't want to see them, Mommy," she said firmly. "They had all night to let me. Inside when I was freezing. Every minute they left me out there was a choice. I may only be 9 now, but I know what love looks like. And leaving a kid outside in the cold while others sleep warm inside? That's not love. That's not even like. That's hate dressed up in excuses." We never responded to the letter. Some bridges once burned should stay ash, and some people reveal exactly who they are when they think no one important is watching. The problem for my in-laws? Meadow was important. She was everything. They just realized it too late. Vernon and Judith ended up moving to Florida 8 months after the incident. The scandal in Eaglewood, combined with losing access to all their grandchildren, made staying unbearable. I heard from Pamela that they tell people down there they're estranged from their children over a misunderstanding, that modern parents are too sensitive. But we know the truth. So does DCFS. So does everyone who saw that Ring doorbell footage of a little girl begging to come in from the cold while her grandfather pointed back to a tent in 34-degree weather. Meadow is thriving now. She's in therapy, yes, but she's also stronger in ways that matter. She knows her worth isn't determined by her gender or anyone's twisted expectations. She knows that family isn't about blood or names or tradition. It's about love that keeps you warm, that opens doors instead of closing them, that sees you as precious exactly as you are. The tent still sits in evidence storage somewhere, a reminder that sometimes the coldest temperatures aren't measured in degrees. They're measured in the distance between a grandmother's heart and a little girl she deemed unworthy of warmth, between a grandfather's pride and a child he left shivering in the dark. And me? I learned that motherly instincts exist for a reason. That nagging feeling I had when I dropped Meadow off that Friday? I should have listened. We all have that inner voice that warns us when something isn't right. Don't ignore it. Don't let politeness or family pressure override your gut feeling when it comes to your children's safety. I also learned that evidence matters. Those text messages I'd saved because they bothered me. They became the proof that protected not just Meadow, but all the grandchildren from further harm. Document everything. Screenshot those troubling messages. Save those uncomfortable emails. You never know when there'll be the difference between misunderstanding and proving a pattern of abuse. Most importantly, I learned that some people will show you exactly who they are through their actions, and when they do, believe them the first time. My in-laws showed us they valued boys over girls, tradition over compassion, their reputation over their granddaughter's safety. They showed us, and now they live with the consequences. Meadow asked me recently if I think Grandma and Grandpa ever really loved her. I told her the truth. I don't think they know how to love anyone who doesn't fit their narrow idea of valuable. And baby, that's their loss, not yours. You are surrounded by people who love you exactly as you are. That's what real family does. She thought about it and nodded. Good thing I have plenty of real family then. Good thing indeed. If this story resonated with you, if you've experienced family discrimination, or if you recognize these warning signs in your own family dynamics, please hit that like button and share this video. Your share might help another parent recognize the red flags before it's too late. Comment below with your thoughts or your own experiences with toxic family dynamics. We read every comment, and your stories help build this community of support. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss our stories. Remember, protecting our children is more important than protecting adult feelings, and family isn't a free pass to harm the vulnerable. Until next time, trust your instincts and keep your babies safe.